I was with the 61st Assault Helicopter Company. They were called the Lucky Stars. And that was the troop ships, or the, we call them the lift ships, or the slicks. And they had a pilot, a co-pilot, and a door gunner, and a crew chief. The crew chief took care of the aircraft, the helicopter. He repaired it all, did all the maintenance. Helicopters have about 1,000 or more moving parts, and they require continual maintenance. You got to have a good maintenance person. The crew chief's really well trained, and the crew chief's a valuable guy, and he does the best he possibly can, because he flies with you. So when you're flying on one side in the rear, you have a door gunner, and on the other side you have the crew chief with also an M60 machine gun. And so you got a pilot, co-pilot, and two other people, a crew of 4 and a Huey. You go out for orientation usually, and they have a standardization pilot, which is usually a warrant officer. Warrant officers were, they were between enlisted men and commissioned officers, but they were technical specialists. And in the case of the Army Aviation, they were helicopter specialists, and they were usually really good pilots. So your standardization pilot or your instructor pilot within a unit was usually a warrant officer who was a real good pilot. So they'd take you out on orientation, make sure you knew how to shoot auto rotations, show you where different landmarks were, and check you out to make sure, even though you got out of high school out of flight school and you got your wings, that you could actually really fly. And so they did that. But there's many stories of, while you're on your check ride, your first orientation flight, they might get a call and say, hey, there's some guys pinned down over here. They need some help. You need to take us some ammunition or do something. And that check ride or that orientation ride would turn into a combat mission. And one of our guys even got shot down on his first flight in Vietnam. And he turned to his seasoned veteran that had been there about 6 or 8 months. He said, is every day like this? Well, every day wasn't quite like that, but every day was different. The assault helicopter units, depending on who you supported, we supported the 173rd Airborne Brigade. We'd go out maybe once a week and have combat assaults, and sometimes we'd have one after another. But on other times, we wouldn't have but maybe one a week or one every 2 weeks. Or sometimes we would just fly resupply missions. And so instead of a combat assault where we had 6 guys per 6 173rd Airborne, they call them sky soldiers, instead of taking those guys in a flight of 10 helicopters and landing, or one at a time, we would resupply those people. Or sometimes we just go get mail and bring it back. And sometimes we'd have what are called ash and trash missions, just to resupply and maybe take somebody that was going on R&R to someplace like that. So it really varied. Sometimes you were pretty busy, and sometimes not so much. Especially when I got there, it was a monsoon season in my area, and the rain was so strong, so heavy, and the winds were so strong that you couldn't fly. And that's when the VC were more active, but we couldn't fly as well, and they knew that. And so we didn't fly as much, but in good weather we flew a lot, and at night times too. I'd say the scariest missions were called the LRRP Missions, Long Range Reconnaissance Patrol. They were like 173rd Airborne Rangers who went out, and we would take them out in the evening and insert them or drop them off somewhere in the jungle or on a mountainside. And they would scout around for about a week or so and watch where the VC were moving in and out of villages, which they did at night to get supplies, and they would recruit guys to fight on their side, some forcibly or peaceably. Sometimes they went because they wanted to get rid of the foreign invaders, which was us. They saw us as the foreign invaders. So we would take the LRRP teams out, drop them off. They would scout around, and they'd set up an ambush. And in the middle of the night, sometime we would get a call, and you would be on a scramble team, like on a call team. And if something happened, they'd say, scramble, scramble, these LRRPs need to be picked up. They'd sprung the ambush, and the LRRPs would call in and say, hey, can you come and pick us up at such and such a coordinates? And, our officer would say, well, why are you whispering? Because we're surrounded. Oh, well, could you call back tomorrow? No, we never said that. So we would have to go out in the middle of the night. And this was the most harrowing mission. I remember the first time that I did that, I was a new guy and I was pretty anxious about being on a call on a scramble mission. And sure enough, in the middle of the night, it wasn't exactly the middle of the night. I think it was about midnight. They call us, scramble, scramble. These guys need help out in the Suical Valley or the Antelope Valley. They need to be picked up and surrounded. And so I got my helmet, my trusty 38 pistol, my maps, my chicken plate, which was a metal bulletproof vest, and I got all my stuff, and I'm going, oh, here we go, in the middle of the night, and I'm going out, and somewhere in our little hooch, some guys were playing a tape deck, and there's you had these TOC 4010S tape decks, and they were playing like a bridge over troubled waters, and I heard that, and I thought, God, I think I'd rather be back in the States drinking beer with my buddies. And here I am going out in this harrowing mission, and some guy that had been there for quite a while, he knew I was new, and he hollers to me, we had these fans, and a fan was really a godsend if you had electricity, which we usually had, but not always. So he says to me, hey, Embers, if you don't come back, can I have your fan? And, of course, I was really frightened, and I didn't think it was funny at the time, but now I do. Now I think that's probably the funniest thing that ever happened to me, can I have your fan? So, anyway, those type of missions were really the hairiest. For other people, they all have tremendous stories about rescuing people and being shot at and shot down and escaping and evading. And I managed to avoid that, although I did go down once. But it was a kind of a matter of getting the right fuel boost shot out, the boost pump shot out, and low on fuel, and the engine quit and had to auto rotate. But the good training came in, and I was able to call for somebody to come pick us up after we landed. And we had 173rd Airborne guys in the back with machine guns, and they jumped out and set up a perimeter. And it didn't burst into flames, although we busted the bubble, and water came all over and inside. But I made that call, and our company commander was coming from a lane, our heliport where we had our maintenance, not too far away, and he heard the call, and it was right on his way, and so we landed, everybody jumped out, set up a perimeter, and sure enough, he came flying in and picked us all up, and we weren't on the ground very long. And later, Chinook came and sling-loaded the helicopter back to get it repaired. And so I started thinking that maybe it would be better if I lost my fighting spirit, and I said, I think it'd be better if I were a medevac pilot. I kind of compromised, and so I told my company commander, I said, sir, I feel that I'm more philosophically disposed to be a medevac pilot or a dust-off pilot. He said, well, son, you've been trained to be a combat helicopter pilot, and our gunship platoon leader just got killed. Our assistant gunship platoon leader just got killed. I want you to be the new gunship platoon leader. So my friend, Chief Zogwin, who was a warrant officer in the gunship platoon, said, yeah, come on, be our gunship pilot. Our platoon leader. And he said, you get to shoot back. And I thought, yeah. And also, you don't have to do those missions in the middle of the night where you land down in the middle of the jungle. These guys are surrounded. They're getting shot at. You can't see anything. You pick them up and fly away, and you don't do that mission anymore. You cover the people and fire rockets and miniguns, and that's a little better position to be in. And people don't shoot at you so much when you got rockets and miniguns on your helicopter. Well, most of the time, you didn't really see actual combatants. And at night you could see fire coming out of an area. See, the bad guys had green tracer rounds, and we had red tracer rounds. So wherever green tracer rounds were coming out, you would fire into that area. So in my situation, we never saw troops in the open. I never saw tanks. Usually it was in a heavily forested or jungle or an area where the VC would dissipate after a confrontation, and you never had people standing there face to face shooting at each other. Although in some LZs, occasionally you would see a person firing at you, but usually they ran away and they faded off into the jungle. In my area, it wasn't the same. Everybody had a different experience, right? You didn't really want to get too close to anybody because they might not be there the next day. There was a little distancing in that way. Although you made friends and good friends, there was always the realization that this was a real dangerous job, and it was in a war zone. So, number one, flying helicopters in that environment was very dangerous, and number two, it was combat. People were shooting at you, so it was a high-risk profession. You volunteered for it. Everybody volunteered. So you knew that something could happen. 18, 19, 20-year-olds and 21-year-olds kind of are invincible and don't even think about those things. I was an old guy. I was like 25, 26, and I thought about those things. To some people that's exhilarating. They have an adrenaline rush, and it is exciting, and it is adventurous, and it's something that you'll never experience in any other way or form. But it's wearing also, and after a while, you don't want to do it anymore. Or I didn't. Some people went back for multiple tours, and everybody went for various reasons. I came back to SeaTac in Washington, and I thought it was beautiful to get back. And I wore my khaki uniforms, and I remember going into the bathrooms and the restrooms, and all the enlisted guys were shedding their army clothes and putting on jeans and stuff. And I thought, oh, wow, why are they doing that? And I didn't really realize there was that big of a protest going on. And when I came back, flew to Wichita, Kansas, my mom and dad were there to greet me, and nobody else said anything. And, nobody welcomed me. And we certainly didn't get preferential treatment to boarding the airplanes or anything like that. And nobody came up to me and offered me thank you for your service. And, people just sort of ignored me. And in fact, I remember my friends and relatives, not my relatives, but my friends, college friends and high school friends, they never talked about Vietnam to me. They never asked me about Vietnam for about 20 years. They just, let's don't talk about it. I was very fortunate I didn't ever have nightmares or anything. But more recently, my wife has said that I have a very strong startle reaction when she comes in the room, and I do. And so I'm kind of jumpy, and I startle real easily. And even today, some lady came up beside me and was going to give me a piece of candy, and about jumped out of my shoes. She said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I scared you so much." I said, "That's all right. I just have a startle reflex." And I think, it's kind of from that era. But fortunately, I was a little older for one thing, and I didn't have any like guilt feelings or anything like that. So, and even though there were some pretty horrendous, I do remember things that I didn't want to remember. I mean, I kind of forgot things that I didn't want to remember, but going back to Vietnam then brought some of these things back, and I remember, buddies crashing and getting killed and things like that were hard to recall and to want to revisit again.